Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you live every Thursday night. Facebook land, YouTube land, so the chats are always fun. Good seeing you there. We can't get to every comment, but do keep in mind that your comments may show up on the show. And if you can't catch us live, catch us in the replay or in your favorite podcasting app. You know me. My name is John Ruark, and I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. And next up, we'll go to World Traveler, Joe Martinez. How's it going, Joe?
Oh! Hello and good evening. Joe Martinez, past master, Manasseh Lodge, number 182, member of other things and stuff. Super jet lagged, but damn glad to be here, as always. Missed y'all. It's been a couple of weeks, but glad we're back.
Where have you been?
Let's see. We did some Masonic traveling. We went to the UK, so Scotland and England, and we'll talk about that in the future. But yeah. Lots of diverse things.
I want to see pictures.
Yeah, I have pictures. I'll do a slideshow.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Let's do a show about that. That'd be fun. All right. And last but not least for tonight, Robert Johnson. Good evening and hello. Is that butterbeer you're drinking?
It's a good beer. That's what it is. Robert Johnson, past master, Waukegan Lodge, number 78, current sitting secretary there, in the just about finished as my term as the worshipful master of the premier Masonic Education Lodge in the state of Illinois, Space Novum. And I think I'll be going back to the secretary chair with any luck. So that's me.
Nice. For life.
It's okay to be a secretary for life if you're in a... No, it's not. But it's easier to be a secretary of a lodge who has a base of individuals who are very competent in the things that they do.
Yeah.
Okay, and
it makes your job easy.
Everything you're saying is great, and it's on paper, it's fabulous. But
on paper,
realize what? Come December or January, you're going to be secretary of 2 lodges at the same time. So now you've broken into.
I've done that. I'm actually secretary of. I think 4 organizations.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. And you know what? You said it sounds good on paper, and I'll just say this: the things that sound great, like a lot of people think, oh, like what competency? Oh my gosh, yeah, that's what it's all about. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be the guy who shares the meme. When I die, I want all the guys I attended lodge with to come to my funeral so they can let me down one last time.
I want them to lower me in the grave so they can let me down one last time.
Yeah. Well, look at this way. I mean, you literally do one more year as a secretary of anything, and you'll get a portrait, like a hand-painted portrait. It's not like one of just the picture ones.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be. Yeah. Let me be secretary. Oh, you guys said you don't have a rule for virtual attendees. I was going to say I'll be a secretary of your lodge.
Yeah, we are. We don't like innovation.
No.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Well, let's give a special shout out to the patrons who support the show. You guys are awesome and rock our socks. Head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable to support Masonic education for another decade or 2.
Till 2040.
Till 2040. Clock's ticking. Like, it's literally, there's the ticker.
When all this stuff up on archive.org and then get hacked and taken down.
Yeah, did you hear about that, Robert? You were just talking about archive.org.
Yeah, I thought that they weren't functional because maybe they had like servers in Florida.
No, they had servers that got hacked.
Yes.
Damn. Yeah. So they there's a lot of amazing Masonic texts out there. Is there like a ransom for this or what's happening?
I don't know.
Yes. Well, this isn't an IT show, but I'll give you the 10-second rundown. It was data breach for people that had logins, and it was a DDoS attack. So basically, you couldn't get to the Wayback Machine or archive.org for a good bit of time. But yeah, so anybody that used their Google account or something to log into archive.org, change your password.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Change your password. 2-factor. Both those things.
2-factor. Yep.
Now, let's talk about Masonry now.
Or we could talk about the tarot card of the week.
Tarot card of the week.
The Mischief Joke.
You know what I hadn't heard in 2 weeks is that song. I did not miss it at all.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's fire up the extra camera here. I have the Moonlight Tarot deck by Dark Forest.
Ooh.
Fancy, very shiny. Good gold foil. Kind of plasticky, snappy cardstock. So let's see what we got.
You are terrible at marketing.
I am. I really am.
Sticky
It's shiny.
stuff.
It's black. It's gold. We'll see what happens. Cut the deck in half and give us a 6 of Pentacles. That's right.
Okay.
6 coins. Look at that. They are
Shiny.
actually
And plasticky.
Mhm.
I like
a
it.
hand on the top, a hand below. As above, so below. We got stars for the Pentacles, which is good. 5-pointed
Yeah.
stars.
I like it.
And what does 6 of coins represent?
That's generosity, giving, sharing your wealth,
Mhm.
which John
It's
does every week.
It's the
Oh.
Adam Smith's invisible hand of tarot cards.
Nice. I like it.
No, seriously though, because it's right in the middle of the minor arcana for the particular suit. You'll notice, like, as you go from not like the lowest to the highest, there is sort of a hierarchical look at, in particular, like the Pentacles is being perhaps one of the most tangible sort of archetypes for us to think about, because we just kind of equate it to money or success or whatever. And so when it's like, right in the middle there, it kind of is like, if you think about it, many of us who are in the middle of our lives maybe have found some imaginable, not imaginable, but some sort of place within our lives where we're comfortable and we're cool with tipping and being generous. And like,
Mhm.
you've kind of found your way, and maybe, you've got this kind of equilibrium of materialism, like you don't need it all and you're willing to give a little bit away, kind of. I've always thought about like a sliding scale on all of the arcana, but in particular for Pentacles, it kind of helps me think about those things. But of course, that's just me. I could be wrong.
Everything
to think about.
RJ said, I agree with. Yeah.
Another thing to think
All
about
right.
is there's always a pro and a con to all those too. So that's also, you could be too generous, right? You could be, we try to say to be generous as Masons without injury to yourself, and we always have to be careful that we give, but we don't give too much. That's so much that it harms us. Food for thought for today. Speaking of giving things away, let's talk about the Democratic Party. As we
Damn.
left off
That was
last, I know.
ice. That was ice cold.
I know. We are gonna be neutral. We are going to give a disclaimer.
After
Another
that,
disclaimer.
no, we're not.
Okay. Now that that's out of the way, as a reminder, where we talked about the Republican Party and how its values may or may not align with Freemasonry, whereas we don't talk about politics in Lodge. We can certainly make sure we approach it in a cautious and friendly manner. We are not advocating that Freemasonry be a political party or that any party necessarily should align 100% with Freemason. We are merely looking at the values and issues of each party, and we'll try to see, are there any alignments with them and the party where it makes sense and where it doesn't. Also, we are not endorsing any specific party or candidate. We are just trying to take an objective view of the platforms as they are. So And as a reminder, we ourselves, the four hosts, are spread across all the different political spectrums. So again, we can't say we are biased in one way or the other, except mine's the best.
And some of us are tired of all of the
Yes,
political parties in the
exactly.
current.
Is none of the above an option? So with that disclaimer under our belt, let's dive deep into is Freemasonry Democrat? And Joe kicked us off last time with a little brief history of the Republican Party and kind of where it started and how it evolved. Do you have something similar like that this week?
Yeah, it's a little bit shorter.
Cool.
But just some little bits of trivia. So the Democratic Party, the one that exists today, is the oldest still surviving political party in the world, not just the country, in the world.
Interesting.
So it's been around as the Democratic Party since 1828. Prior to that, and there's if you go between, I'm not going to say Wikipedia was the reference, but the sources that it has, there's two different ideas on where the Democratic Party started. If it started with the Democratic Republican Party that Jefferson started the first political party
all the way back then.
All the way back then in the 1700s, late 1700s, to combat the Federalist Party that was basically run by or organized by Alexander Hamilton of the popular musical fame, yes. But so you had Jefferson on one side and Hamilton on the other. And what fell out of that Jeffersonian party, which kind of had elements of both the Republican and the Democratic Party back then, morphed into the Democratic Party with Andrew Jackson in the 1820s. So, in fact, I found a really awesome, on Wikipedia, I found a really awesome little chart that I'm going to bring up. Let's see. Share screen. I think this is it right here. Cool. Can y'all see that? So, yeah, there it is. Okay. So you've got the Federalists in the 1790s and the Democratic/Republican started by Jefferson. That was the first party system. So we've gone through like 5 or 6 different generations of political parties here in the United States. The reason why I wanted to bring this up was because they have that awesome little anti-Masonic party that came after the Federalist system, but then kind of didn't survive into the later throes of the Democratic Party system. So they were on the other side of the Democratic Party in the 1820s. And we all know, we've talked about anti-Masonry and the anti-Masonic Party, quite a few times. But just to know that they were on that side of the fence. But by the time of the post-Civil War, you have, or right around the time that before that, when Abraham Lincoln was running for president, you have the two political parties the way that we understand them today. You have Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other. And for the longest time, stop sharing. So for a very long time, the Democratic Party was one of, and we're talking about post-Civil War, they were interested in expanding presidential power and, the political interest of former states that, still maintain slavery. Farming was a big thing for them, and geographic expansion out into the rest of the continent that we now know of. They were very against having a federal banking system for the longest time. And they were originally opposed to high taxes. And the reason why I bring that up is because all of a sudden, with the arrival of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the whole underpinning of the Democratic Party really changed overnight. So when he was first elected as a Democratic president in the early 1930s, this is when they started to really espouse this very liberal platform, or liberalism as we understand it today, and the expansion of the role of government in our country. This is where things like Social Security came from, from the Democratic Party. Unemployment insurance, that was a thing that the Democratic Party put into place with the arrival of FDR. New Deal, that was pure Democratic Party idealism. Again, and you got to think about where we were as a nation at the time. Was we had just gotten out of the Great Depression, where people were literally eating the leather inside their shoes. You know what I mean? Like, people did not have two pennies to rub together, and now you've got the government giving you all these systems to give you jobs and take care of you and give you resources and all this stuff. So that kind of formed the political party that we now see today. You know, so that spread of liberalism that came with FDR is still alive in the 2020s.
I think also we have to address something. Number one, thank you, Bernie. And also, I wanted to mention Berkey Bendix says, TMR, before we figure out if Freemasonry is Democrat, let's first define what a Democrat is, please. So, number one, if you watch our episode on Is Masonry Republican, I think you're going to find out that we're probably not going to come to a consensus on whether or not the fraternity is or is not a particular
spoiler alert
set of ideologies. I will say that it did feed Denslow's 10,000 Famous Freemasons into a AI platform. Nice. And I said, cross-reference these famous people with their famous, political positions and whatnot, and tell me whether or not of the famous Freemasons would we lean one way or the other.
Oh, interesting.
And, AI said we're 72% Democratic. But This is also like, it's an AI platform. What does it know? And like, to be truly honest, I'm not sure, how many of those guys in the 10,000 Famous Freemasons are Democrats. So
72% of statistics are made up too. So.
That's correct. So the one of the things I wanted to mention here is Joe, you hit it on it, and I think it deserves to be expanded a little bit. A long time ago, when I was very politically misguided, I held certain positions, and I got into an argument with somebody that I thought was an idiot, and they were not. They taught me a lot about politics and things, and something that they had mentioned in one of our discourses. I say discourses, but it was probably an argument. Is they talk about the switch between Republican and Democratic parties, which is often referred to as the party realignment. So this is something where people go, "Oh, that's when the Republicans were Democrats and Democrats were Republicans," and people just like their heads spin and they go, "What are you talking about?" But we have to kind of think, we have to acknowledge this because at least in America, Freemasonry has been around as longer than the political parties. So the influence that these political parties had on Masons has shifted over time and has just like the party platforms have shifted. So in a couple of bullets that I just kind of prepared for this episode, I wanted to touch on this, and that is one, the Civil War to early 20th century. So originally, the Republican Party is, again, founded on anti-slavery principles and was the party of Abraham Lincoln, of course, and the Union during the Civil War. So during this time, the Democratic Party is more aligned with agrarian interests of the southern states. In the early 20th century, we have some changes that are happening. So as this century progressed, individual economy and urbanization shifts political dynamics. Democrats begin to adopt more of a progressive policy under leaders like Woodrow Wilson, Roosevelt, as you mentioned, particularly during the New Deal era. And this is where we see like the birth of what many people attack today as quote unquote socialism, but try to take away Social Security and people lose their minds. So the civil rights movement is the next big shift that I think most of us are going to be familiar with. So during the civil rights movement, we have a major turning point that comes in the 60s. The Democratic Party, especially under Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson, they really start to champion civil rights movement, which really starts to alienate some of our Southern Democrats. And they kind of had like it's a stupid name for them, but they called them Dixiecrats. Southern strategy happens, and so in response to this, the Republican Party under Richard Nixon, he galvanizes this whole thing, and later Ronald Reagan kind of helps with this as well. And what they did was they implemented the Southern strategy, which was appealing to conservative and white Southern votes who were disenfranchised with the Democratic's quote-unquote civil rights platform. And then you have a shift in party bases. So over time, the Republican Party embraces more of this conservative ideology. And what we even see today is and I'm not, again, this is just objective facts here. Evangelical Christianity, it plays a big part in it. And while the Democratic Party starts to increasingly attract what they called, liberal and progressive voters, minorities, and urban populations. So this kind of ideological swap happens over 100 years. And certainly knowing this helps us to look at the fraternity and how the fraternity operates in America. I mean, you can look at all of the things that Freemasonry has done in and for America, and the influence it's had in other countries. And you can certainly say the policies of Masonry, their progressive policies in Masonry, were both, I think, idolized by both party platforms in all eras. But it is important to call this stuff out. So if we were to say what is a Democrat today, I think that's where we're going to get into maybe some of the hard texts that John has pulled for us later. But.
No, I think, and just to add on to that, I think one thing that we tend to forget, as much as we want to put Masonry on a pedestal, and because you can't say, when this nation was being born, it was absolutely founded on Masonic ideals, right? But we had, again, no political parties, right? Before George Washington became president, there was no political parties, right? So, as people got in the way and started to add their opinions to the mix, I think that's what started to change things a little bit. But I think what we forget is both the Freemasonry that was practiced during all those time periods you talked about, Robert, and the way that this nation has charted its course. It's very geographic based, right? So the Freemasonry that was happening in the 1850s in Georgia was a hell of a lot different than the Freemasonry that was being practiced in Vermont. You know what I mean?
Provincial Masonry, exactly.
Very provincial, right? So, and I think that colored both the Masonry and the way that the ideals of Freemasonry were espoused, as well as how people were acting in government at the time as well. And we shouldn't gloss over that, because it still impacts it today. You go across the border between two different jurisdictions, and Masonry and what they think Masonry should be is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. This is a really good conversation about the style and the flavor of a political party, whether it be right-leaning or left-leaning, has even evolved over the times, even in our lifetimes too. Okay, so one concept that I learned about years ago was this whole thing, the concept of the Overton window, where if you actually think about your spectrum of really crazy ideas to kind of sensible ideas, there's you can usually convince people that that there's some policies that you could probably agree with in the middle there, and there's this frame of where once those policies get really too crazy, okay, no one would go for that. But over time, this window can slide, and things that were considered radical now start to become the norm. And then, so when we're talking, here in 2024 about how polarized these parties have become, it is very much a winner-take-all kind of party, where both sides are now are appealing to the extremes, and that window is sliding so much further for both sides. So it's like, well, we have to embrace all of these democratic social ideas, or we have to embrace all these nationalistic ideas, right? It sucks.
Is essentially, it really does suck, right? It's terrible for any population who has to go through this, because what ends up happening is, granted, let's just pretend that we have a peaceful transition of power regardless. When this occurs, you either end up with a incumbent party who galvanizes and puts duct tape over all the seals and everything they did in the last 4 years, or you end up with the oppositional party taking over, having to spend all of the time, rather than doing anything that they promised, undoing all of the other party platforms' ideologies. And so everybody is the loser in this case. which has been the case why your kids might go, what's all this political talk? There's probably all these kids out there today, my kids especially, like, why is everybody all so charged up about this election?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, because people feel like we need a return to meeting, crossing the aisle, as it were.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
brings us back to Masonry,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
The equilibrium.
I did see. Oh gosh, I gotta find this infographic. Someone actually, because all of the congressional votes for what gets passed for bills are public, and it by name of who and which party voted for each bill. Someone did some data analysis over the past 30 years worth of bills that were passed, and what they did was they actually did these little dot clouds of red dots and blue dots, right? And per bill, they showed what was the average bipartisanship of a bill passing. In other words, if the red and blue dots are together, that was primarily, sponsored a bipartisanship vote. And when you animate this thing over 30 years, you find that this dot cloud of blue and red actually starts to spread apart. So now, even today, you'll see these bills being passed that it's like the whole party votes for all one side says yes and all the other side says no, or vice versa. And so there's statistical data that proves this is not just a gut feeling, that we are actually, our actions have become polarized as well, which is weird.
Well, and not to beat this, I know we need to get back to the Masonry part of it, but I did see on TikTok, of all places, it was a video that showed presidential debates going back to the 1970s or late 70s, early 80s to today. And you got guys like Carter and Reagan being so polite and complimenting each other during presidential debates. And then the madness you see nowadays. And it's like, wow, that's what they watched on TV 40 years ago. It's crazy. We don't see that.
Yeah, we had a little bit of it at the VP debate, which was crazy. The Daily Show the Daily Show had a joke and it said, you know what's wild? Why don't these guys run on a ticket together?
Yes, I was thinking that. That's hilarious.
I was like, wow, these guys were pretty cordial. And yeah, to your point, Joe, it has become increasingly just a wild show of ad hominem attacks.
Well, we talked about this during the Republican episode, right? How people are so on both sides are so driven on being identified by their politics, right? That's it on both sides of the aisle, right? They're just so charged to want to espouse that, and whether it's a bumper sticker or a shirt and a red hat, on both sides, people have to be identified by their politics, and I would like to know when that exactly happened, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's a really good book. I think it's called is it Tribalism or Tribes by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about that the whole concept of again how our human nature is we have to associate with the tribe. We are social animals, and we have to find our tribe, and we feel protected when we're in that tribe. So that's a good thing for Freemasonry, right? So that should be a good thing. And then, but yet we'll have these other tribes that we join, which give us that sense of identity and protection. So one thing I did to carry on this in the modern day, just like I did last week or last time with the Republican platform, I went and said, well, why don't we just, regardless of how it's shifted over time, where are we today? Go find the official party platform. I did that with the Republican GOP platform, and then this week I did the 2024 published August of 2024 Democratic Party platform. So this is sort of like breaking. This is 92 pages.
It was longer than the other one.
It's more reading, fewer bullets. So I actually had to.
Do they want people to read this?
I know. Can you put it on a TikTok for me? That'd be great.
Can we get a TLDR?
TLDR.
To be honest, I have to say, it's longer, right? But I think there's, the important thing here is context. And if anybody goes, oh, what's the big deal? I mean, you can't pick you can't pick how important something is, like based on the fact of whether or not you can get through it because it's too long. And that's a lame excuse.
That's
Don't use
a
it.
cop out. Yep. Exactly. So I too went to AI to just ingest this.
No,
compare
you
it with-
didn't. I thought you were going to read the whole thing tonight.
Okay. All right. So chapter 1, growing our economy from the bottom up and middle out. This election is a choice between two very difficult. Okay. I'm bored already. I will say for the tone of this, it was interesting because I still have the Republican one up as well, and for a platform, golly day. So again, I'm a very left brain person. I want this to read like a recipe manual. I want just very A, B, C. Here are points, and both sides make this very much flowery. Look how great we are. Look how bad the other side is. It's like, can you just tell me where you stand on these issues? That would make it a lot easier.
I will say this, and I did read some of the 92 pages. I did feel less like I was being yelled at in this one.
No.
Than
yes.
Like personally.
And it's less yelling, but it's also look at all these policies we did. So there is a lot of
backpatting.
Backpatting. That's a really good term to describe the tone of the Democratic platform.
But
some valid.
If you self-identify,
and
this is patting your back too, John.
That's true. Yes, of course. My back is all red from all the backpatting. So again, let's try to extract some themes out of here. And again, we can't cover everything because, Masonry doesn't have an official stance on war or anything like that. So we're not going to really talk about diplomatic strategy or anything like that. But we'll try to.
That's not true. So that's not true. And I've heard this in not just in Virginia, but in other jurisdictions. You are charged during one of your degrees to be a quiet and peaceable citizen, and be faithful to your country, that kind of thing. So, which kind of
you could extrapolate,
is above political party, right? It's you're supposed to be true to your country and you're supposed to be a patriot. And they definitely talked about that at the beginnings of the birth of this nation. So, regardless of who's in power, if you're a Mason, you're charged to be a quiet and peaceable citizen.
So no upheavals and revolutions and all that.
So. They try to avoid those, I think, after a while. Yeah.
Okay. 1776, that was an anomaly, but other than that, none of those.
Well, it's only 3% supported, so
that's true.
Yeah.
Let's see. At a high level, right? So one of the things that the modern Democratic Party platform is known for and having policies for is kind of equity and equality and human rights. So there's a lot of policies that have been promoted and then that they're going to continue to promote into the future. We as Freemasons like to treat everyone on the level, right? We understand equality is a natural extension of being a child of God under brotherhood of God under the brotherhood of men under the fatherhood of God. There we go. I got it. And
I like brotherhood of God.
The brotherhood of God.
Woo!
Me and God, we're bros.
Shiny aprons for that. Yes.
Yeah, really gold flashy ones. Right. So Freemasonry values equality as a core virtue. And all men are created equal. And then when you look at the Democratic Party platform, they want to continue to institute policies, funding, and support for more equitable programs in both gender pay gap and LGBTQIA plus activities, trying to resolve economic inequality. So, that is a common theme of the policies that the platform is trying to do to reduce the inequalities of many types, many facets of America.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they're using anecdotal and data to sort of identify those hardest hit with the sort of legacy of inequity in America and attempt to resolve this by various means, which may or may not be popular with either political party. But equality, it's a Masonic
Yes.
tenet.
It is.
Well, I look at this, the political aspect of it, as like you said, John, like a direct correlation to everybody on the level, right? Like Freemasons should believe and understand that each person has an intrinsic dignity to them, right? And if we were to take that chart that I know Robert did a couple of weeks ago, it would probably, human worth and the worth of the individual would probably get more of a checkbox on this side than on the one we talked about 2 weeks ago. So, but yeah, to your point, then it kind of starts to separate out when it's, yes, we need to treat everyone as equal versus let's take everybody's resources to make everybody equal.
Right. Yeah, it's the equity versus equality conversation. And that's a whole ball of wax right there, right? And so are we trying to support the equality of mankind and womankind, or are we trying to make the unequal equitable, meaning that that we get equal outcomes regardless?
That's all the above. I mean, the values espoused by both democratic policies over time, even looking at the conditions of those values as they were Republican, these are all equality, liberty, community, charity, progressive thinking, and reforms. This is people who would argue against this. You can say, well, we have ample evidence of America's involvement in many a political reform. Secularism and tolerance and mysteries and symbolism, that particular stands out as a beacon in both parties, to be honest with you. But just those first few are very important, I think, to the Democratic platform as well as to the Masonic platform. We are, after all, as you pointed out in the chat, progressive moral science. I will fist fight you wherever you want if you tell me that a progressive moral science, in the context in which that was written, means a system of progressive degrees, which it does not historically refer to in context. It is a progressive moral science, as in a progressive humanity, the same thing that Friedrich Nietzsche spoke about. So we can box if you want to.
Nice.
I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I understood you enough to want to fight you.
We'll put you up in dukes.
All right. So put in the chat who would win in a fisticuffs.
Anybody against me, I will lose.
Right to the fetal position.
Yeah, that's it.
Kick them while I'm down. Next one, we also have service to the community. The Democratic Party platform highlights service to the community through governmental programs, emphasizing social safety nets, healthcare, education, and more. So again,
well,
Joe?
yes, I think what we're going to see with a lot of these is, I think more so than the show we did a couple of weeks ago, was there are policies that this party is talking about that really align with the ideals that we try to espouse in Freemasonry. It's just its execution is where we draw the line.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Perfect.
It's really interesting because, like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're still, the Democratic Party is still, not weird because I'm neither, but it's still the party of social programs, right?
Yes.
Social to promote charity, to promote health, well-being, that kind of thing, which, for some countries it works really well. Like, I just spent 2 weeks in the UK, where, most of Europe is very social program driven, and that comes at the expense of other things, which we could talk about on another show. But it's just interesting how super great idea, but then you have to figure out, number one, how to sell it, and number two, how to pay for it, right? And that's where the actual government
exactly right.
part of it.
Well, and so I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I was going to bring up later. To pull the thread on this, like, there is the focus on social welfare programs. We've also talked about how the Republican Party also, like to Robert's point, again, Social Security is that third rail and nobody wants to talk about that. Both parties are like, we're all in on that. We're all going to agree that that's not to be touched. And so, but if you look, really compare and contrast the Republican platform versus the Democrat platform, I think I heard you say, Joe, that they probably agree on a lot of the basics. It's just the execution, how to get there is different, right? So you will see themes of patriotism, equality, right, caring for each other. It's just that when you look at the general, and this is a huge blanket statement, the general Republican approach is we want to cut programs to, again, give people freedom back. So cut taxes, let people have their own money to take care of themselves the way they want. And then the Democratic approach is more of, not everyone can take care of themselves. We need to have more of these social programs to take care of these edge cases. That's a huge overstatement.
You said it in a very nice way, and I applaud you for that. I'm gonna rip the layer of frosting off that cake.
Just lick that off.
Just that cheesecake frosting, or that cream cheese frosting. So I think what I heard you say was one political party, and again, using Masonic ideals, right, is very, very into personal responsibility, right? It is, we're going to give you a venue and a place and a world in which you have the ability to succeed and kick ass and be awesome. Right. It's your personal responsibility to do so. And then you have the other political party which says, hey, we're going to give you all the things that you need to be able to function as a human being, right? Mm-hmm. And then all the success and the wealth and the glitz and the glamour, that's extra. That's icing on the cake, but that's not what we're here to do. And that's really what diverges the core ideals. Take all the weird 2024 political crap and get rid of that.
Right.
That's big two differences. So in a Masonic context, that's really interesting, right? Because we do, as Freemasons, we talk about your personal responsibility to learn and grow and find out who the hell you are and what your place is in the creation, right? Or it's a social club where you get to hang out with your friends once or twice a month, whichever road you choose to go down. But then on the other hand, we teach you moral lessons through allegories to then say, hey, you're a good person if you give, not just of money, but of your talents and of your education and of your time and of your resources. And we give you ways in order to do that. So perfect example, as soon as I knew we were going to talk about the Democratic Party, first thing I thought of was Shriners Hospitals, right? Yeah. Like, this is a purely social platform for a Masonic organization to give medical care to people without charging them a single penny for it, right? And we have a place where kids can get medical care that they need, usually for very awful diseases. That's pure social healthcare, right? And that's espoused by an organization.
Yeah, which over 100 years ago, like that was a commonplace thing. We didn't have the need for large government programs because we had tons of fraternities, right? The rise of fraternalism provided a lot of these social safety nets because it was in your neighborhood. Like, it was, your lodge had, a very much like a social welfare program.
I think okay, so a couple of things I'm going to chime in on that you guys are a little bit past, but I'm going to bring up are, you mentioned that the difference between the parties are like, hey, individual, or here's the stuff you need. But the elephant in the room is still read the fine print, because what you're going to find out is that while this may be true, there are still laws that are created that tactfully and surgically inhibit one's ability to truly have liberty and equality and freedoms.
100%.
So with that stated, the second thing is I had to chime in on Berkey Bendeck and Eddie B. They were talking about here the idea of aiding. Here's the thing: Freemasonry is very charitable. However, it is done by choice and not by governmental coercion, forced charity. And Eddie says, bingo. And what I find interesting about this statement, it's not that either of you are wrong. I have a question, and that is the fundamental idea that, are we expected, and do you think we are so altruistic as to not be mandated? Adam Smith talks about the invisible hand, that the success of you will allow you and sort of change the way you think to give liberally to the relief of those who might need the assistance. But we know this just isn't true, right? The human mind, as it is biologically in this state right now, 2024, nobody's that altruistic. Maybe Masons are, which is why we love to just donate. But the general public, I don't know that we would have such success, and that people would be able to claw out of their financial situations or their poor situation that they might be in,
it's
without
interesting.
the need for some of these social.
And the other thing that I think I would love to explore, like a multiverse where we didn't have other incentives, because you can have the mandate, right, which is the stick, or you could have the carrot, which is like tax incentives, right? So think about a lot of these organizations that do give much more charitable donations of time, labor, and materials, but they do it also to get the tax write-off. So would they have also been as charitable as a private organization where they're not a tax write-off? Yeah. We just don't know. We don't have that A/B test.
If I brought in $100,000 and I get a sweet tax break, if I only made $80,000,
it's a write-off.
I'm gonna donate $20,000. So,
but yeah, so you have a point. I mean, it's really hard to tell what the alternatives would look like, and that's I think it would be cool to have a lot of that stuff pushed down to the states to have these different states run different experiments. Yep, but that's a different conversation for maybe the next episode. Here's one that I think you'll like, Robert, that I wanted to get to as well. The Democratic Party platform explicitly affirms the separation of church and state as part of a First Amendment, free speech, and protecting religious freedom, but not mixing the two. And why do you think that I thought of you when I read that?
Just because I rail against that stuff all the time.
As does the Scottish Rite.
Yeah, the Scottish Rite does do that. They also, but the thing is that a lot of people go, "Oh wait, what?" And they might hear that you say that, and it's like, well, they're so nationalistic as the Scottish Rite. The Scottish Rite very much is super, super patriotic, but they also understand individual liberty, and not so much as people might read. You have the freedom of religion, but that also includes, even though it might not be written, I'm probably not the most educated person to talk about this, but I would say that for me, that also includes for individuals a freedom from religion. And that means that laws based on some sort of religious ideology should not go into effect the entire populace of said, country or whatever. And so I think that's important with the idea of the separation of church and state. And what's interesting is you look at something like the American Revolution that so many people love. The Masons love the idea of the American Revolution. We said, no, you're not going to do it. Issue of representation, and we're going to say, no, we're not doing this. Well, what we did was pretty amazing, but also what we did was seen by other countries. And France gets a bad rap, but
they really do.
Everybody's like, "Oh, the French, blah 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 blah. They're not great or whatever." Dude, those guys like heard about and read what we did, read some Thomas Paine, and then decided to cut the heads off their king literally and separate the church from the state in such a way that their entire motto, I wish, was the United States. We have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They have life, liberty, fraternity. And I think that's just awesome. But in that same way, that is the example of how they have separated in the most forceful way and legal way, the separation of church and state, and that it drives the idea of individual freedoms to sort of. But is it this because this brings up a larger philosophical debate that can we even have true secularism in the government that provides the laws, which most people will land on this idea that it comes down to morality, which Masonry is a progressive system of morality. So, it's a huge can of worms, but it's very, very interesting. And that's a cop out as I say that, because I just don't know where to go with it.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. And I know we're stepping outside the bounds of this a little bit, but there is and let me take my Mason hat off. There's the argument is, can you be moralistic without having a basis, a faith-based argument for that, right? There's some people that really believe that, right? You can't be truly moral if you don't have something, if you're an atheist, for example. And if you're reasonably intelligent, that's not true. You can be a decent person and not have a belief in something. That's okay. And
but you can still have a moral standard, a well-defined moral standard.
Right. It doesn't have to be based on
scripture
or something, or fear-based, right? Or whether it's faith-based or fear-based, it doesn't have to be. So yeah, you can be. I know many decent people who don't have a belief in something, and that's okay. I like them anyway. But I think that that's interesting because the way Masonry is practiced in most places, there is that umbrella of a belief in something greater than yourself. And with that belief in something greater than yourself are these expectations of you as a human being, right? So I think that's where that moral science starts to play a part, right? At least the way we teach it,
I like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop using my hands to talk now.
Thank you, Joe, for expounding on what I was having difficulty with. I also just shout out to Berkey and Eddie are just going off in the chat. Good conversation. But I will tell you guys, thanks for the Thomas Paine love. Love it. Thanks. He's my boy.
Nice. Well, we're at that time. There are many other things that we could dive into, but I think it's a good. We covered a good generalization of not only specific parts of the platform, but then comparing and contrasting as well, both to Freemasonry and the other political party. So this has been a good conversation all along. We've taken some off ramps, but then we got back on the highway again. So I think it's good to start to bring it back and say, Joe,
what
is Freemasonry Democrat? And actually, someone tried to correct me in the event page to say, well, you should have said, is it democratic? Because it's a democratic platform. We do know, by definition, Freemasonry is democratic because it actually elects its members, its leaders.
Depends on where you live.
By the definition. We didn't say the votes weren't fixed, but at least we vote. So
in some places, it's still divine rule. Yes. But what was your question?
Is it democratic?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Democratic. And it's not Republican. It's not neither. Not either. Yeah. No, absolutely not. But this was fun. I liked comparing and contrasting the two current iterations of the political parties we have in this country, and showing how they align or veer very far away from Masonic ideals. I thought it was a fun thought exercise. I love that even after we had done the Republican one, we were still getting comments of like, no, and you shouldn't talk about it. Shut up, read things, be educated, be informed. I'm just getting to an age in my life where the dumb is just starting to bother me.
You're cranky.
Be informed. Yes, I am cranky, but just be an informed human being, no matter what you are, what political party you are. And and get out there and vote. Because if you don't vote, shut up. That is one of the rights you're given, in a country. As someone who's traveled the world, not everyone in the world has the right to voice their opinion, no matter how big or small it is. But be thankful you live somewhere that you can do that. So go do that.
Go do it.
Go do it.
Robert, what say you?
What say me? I'm very much in Joe's camp, and I'll just say that Freemasonry, as it is, has this steadfast commitment to what you might call it political neutrality. And this is a remarkable testament to Freemasonry's core values, right? We talk about unity and brotherhood amongst diverse individuals. There's a great line in literature that says, we bring together men who might always remain at a perpetual distance. And so we deliberately eschew these political affiliations, endorsements. Have you ever seen anybody walk into a Masonic hall? The most political thing I've ever seen them wear, like as a lapel pin, has been an American flag. Uh, Freemasonry creates this inclusive environment where I think our members, we've talked about it all the time, from all walks of life. We come together in, many times, I should say 99% of the time, mutual respect and harmony. And this sort of neutrality, or rather, maybe a better word is this equilibrium, fosters a really nice open dialogue and an exchange of ideas through our philosophies, which are kind of explained in our degrees. If we choose to crack those books open, or to crack those ideas open, this whole thing and the personal betterment, it creates this place of common ground where these sort of shifts in political ideology don't really have a place or a home. And so when people said, "Oh, you shouldn't say is it Democrat or is it Republican," in response to our social media post promoting this episode or the previous, um, they're both right and wrong, because we're asking the question to explain why the question is almost
Mm-hmm.
a non-starter. It's like a question that almost doesn't make sense.
Right. I love it.
So that's where I land on it. I want to thank you guys for watching, especially these last two episodes, because these were, if you were anything like most Masons, you probably read that and just pooped your pants. No, and we all joked that we were going to get our dues cards pulled. But the important thing is to understand the context and really have an open dialogue about things while keeping it civil and Masonic, and talking about these things, which I hope we did. And I couldn't think of having a better group of guys to talk to this about. So
Yeah,
thanks.
agreed. Yeah, I'm with you. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the chat. Didn't have to ban anybody today, but it was good because
That's great. It's just because Jason wasn't here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jason likes yielding the Banhammer. He really does. But no, everyone's been on their best behavior. Good conversations and all, and I think that's the whole point. Is, man, wouldn't it be great if, like, at all times we could have this level of conversation where we might completely disagree, or might be completely different spectrums, but we can say, I see this side, I see this side. We're not trying to win each other over. We're just trying to explore, trying to be curious. And that's,
If only there was a place you could do that.
if only.
If only.
Where do you do that?
Oh,
Not your local lodge. This has been fun. I appreciate that, because one thing that I've been curious about, because I'm really enjoying going to the official political platforms and diving into those, because when my kids are asking me, well, what's a Democrat or what's a Republican, you kind of speak in platitudes, you just kind of speak in what the snippets of the sound bites you hear on TV. Well, let's go see what is their official stance on these issues. And it's been very eye-opening for both sides to see the platitudes that are in some of these platforms, because they're trying to also appeal to emotions as well. So it's not just a simple set of policies and figures. There is some sort of call to action and inspiration they're trying to build into their platforms as well. And so pulling through that, we have to then try to separate what is the fluff to kind of get you inspired or spun up, and then what is an actual, like, official or efficient policy that they could actually execute. So it's been fun to do that and see where the meat is inside of these platforms. So again, we'll probably keep continuing doing this, and yeah, that's all I have for this week. So I want to thank you all very much for watching. See you next week, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.